Hey everybody, welcome to today's Using Technology Better show. It's been great to be back in the seat today and working as always with Blake. I'm Mike from usingtechnologybetter.com and I'm a Google certified teacher and trainer, and I just love to help teachers and students get going with Google Apps for education. It's great to be partnering with Chantel from Virtunet in today's show, and so Chantel's actually going to be into the document which we've just shared out on Google+, but if you don't have access to that document yet, we've got a short URL that you can use, and so it's bit.ly, so it's a bit.ly URL shortener. It's bit.ly and then / capital C and capital B for Chromebooks, so capital C, capital B, and then all lowercase Hangout. So one word, CB, and then Hangout. I'm just going to drop that into a link sharer here in Google+, and hopefully that's going to work for us as well, and it might pop up on the side of the screen. So Blake, it's great to have you on board, and how's things going for you, mate?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, really good, really good. Super busy. As you know, we're fully committed Chromebook school. We've got 750 of them in the school, and certainly keeps us busy amongst other things, but things are going really well. I'm just looking forward to sort of diving in here and getting people's questions, and if anyone has any questions during this webinar, there is a Q&A app I believe is running. Is that right, Mike?
Yep, and they can also use the document.
Use the doc, yeah. I'd suggest probably using the doc's the best way to go. I think there's a link Mike has shared out for that. Jump into that, have a look around. There's some resources up the top there and questions below. Just shoot in any questions and we can sort of address those as the podcast goes along.
Yeah, actually I'm just looking at this at the moment, Blake, and it's saying Q&A app is disabled for some reason. So we'll definitely have to use that doc, which is just bit.ly / capital C, capital B, and then Hangout. Excellent. Just tried to share out during while Blake was talking there, and it's just saying there's an error on that one as well. So we'll put all the links to the show notes that we're talking about into that doc, and that might just have to be our central source of truth for today. It's been interesting, Blake, over the last few days. I've been noticing a lot of newspaper articles from all around the world, actually, and those newspaper articles have been talking about how tablets are a little bit on the nose at the moment. Schools are selling them, leaving them, not purchasing them, and they're moving more towards laptops. And this seems to be a trend in the newspapers, not just in the realm of like higher education or high school, but also junior school. And there's been a little bit of discussion on I guess, on Google+, especially, where we're starting to ask questions like, where are we going? What's the trend here? I'm always trying to stay in front of what the trend is, and I'm just interested to see this starting to progress. I don't know, have you got any opinion around iPads or tablet devices? Do you use those in your schools at all?
We trialled everything before we went down the Chromebooks path at the start of this year. We trialled iPads, we trialled Windows laptops and various hardware and setups for that, so different sorts of laptops, MacBooks. We looked at everything. And one of the issues with iPads for us was just trying to enforce a platform. So we weren't really able to say, okay, we want this app, we're going to push it out to the device for the kids to use. It was really kids have to go get it, they have to get their credit card on the file, and their parents have to be involved in that because they're all under 18 or under 16 or whatever it is, they can't get a credit card. So really they were the big ones for us. There's also other issues around the ergonomics of it. We were looking for a device that was great to not just consume but create on, and there was a lot of sort of thinking around that we spoke to a lot of our KLA managers, and we said, what's the priority for your consumption, or is it production? So a lot of them, well, pretty much all of them said, look, we need a device that can do both. We need to be able to type on it and really do great word processing. I mean, the majority of the work that goes on a computer is research on the internet and word processing, both of which require you to type. The faster you can type, the more productive you're going to be. So we looked for devices with a full keyboard for that reason. But I think really it comes back to just Apple's approach to the whole situation. They really are a home device more than an enterprise device, and they've snuck their way into the enterprise. And there's no doubt that they're a beautiful looking device, and I'm sure everyone on this podcast probably has one. But Yeah, I just think that in the school environment, there's a lot of challenges with them, especially from resources being created for them. A lot of things aren't touch-enabled yet. The mouse, it's hard to get around that, especially with book providers. I know in the US, Pearson said that they had, I know this great resource of books ready to go for California, and Los Angeles was going to institute iPads in all their state schools as a city thing, and they pulled that, I think, a couple of days ago, just because a whole lot of issues with restrictions on the browser, and Pearson's publishing arm was saying things were working on the iPad and they weren't, and there were just a whole lot of problems. So I think their trials have gone particularly badly over there, and it sort of mirrors the experience that we had over here.
Yeah, right. And I guess, like, with that, there's obviously a place for iPads. I think you're right that iPads were not necessarily designed to be used in schools, and they kind of just took over that way. I don't know, is there a trend away from tablet devices in general? I don't know if you noticed, like outside education even. I just noticed sitting in the Qantas Club the other day waiting to fly back from New Zealand. A couple of years ago, everyone seemed to be on iPads in business, and I thought, well, that's a fair enough trend. A lot of business people are using them, and so maybe there's a role for school to play in terms of getting students ready for that. But as I look around now, it seems like most people are back to PC and Mac kind of books as well. So do you find that that's the case, or have you got any good experience outside of that?
It's hard for us to know. I mean, we do some surveying with our students, and they tell us they use their Kindles and iPads for consuming a lot, like reading books or browsing the web while they watch TV and things like that. But in terms of curriculum use, not so much. And certainly business use, I think it was a great door opener, the iPad. It could say, well, now I can take this thing and have my email on it and go to meetings and all that sort of stuff. Then people started realizing, actually, I want to do a little bit more than just, tap a few keys and send off a 3-word email. I want to start creating on these devices. And that's sort of where the iPad lets down. Like almost everyone I know who uses an iPad regularly has a keyboard case for it, which is sort of, defeating the purpose a little bit. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know. I think there is a shift away from it, and even Android tablets. I mean, Google have gone to great lengths to make those very accessible to schools, and I still think they fall short for the same problems. Just that touch interface, it's great for consumption, but really not producing something and being collaborative and trying to be productive.
Yeah, I guess those would be teachers who would argue the case that they're great for creating videos, and you can do a whole range of things with them there. I guess one of the issues that came up quite a bit, especially in the last trip, and especially when you and I were over in WA, I don't know, when was that, 3 weeks ago or so, there was a lot of schools over there who had committed to iPads across their school network. And one of the issues they had was trying to get information off those devices, whether that be onto the computers, like onto their network, into the cloud, and they had some issues around that. So it seems like it seems to be a few common problems, but at the same time you talk to people and they say, well, if I leave an iPad and because that system is too restrictive, it's too locked down, it's too hard to manage, and then I go to something like a Chromebook, well, I'm kind of leaving one bad scenario for another, because now I'm locked into Google's system. There's things on a Chromebook that you can't obviously do. So how do you talk to teachers and schools when they start asking you questions around management and use and so on that way?
Yeah, sure. So with the iPad, I mean, a lot of schools are locked in, as you're saying. They've got a program in place and they want to use them, and it's no secret that Apple, when they run their PD sessions for schools, they spend 70% of that session talking about Google Drive and talking about Google Mail and all of those services. So I think I don't know whether there's too much of a concern over moving to a Chromebook because it's in the Google ecosystem. I think the concern is around, is it the right device? We had this catastrophic problem with iPads. We don't want to have a repeat of it, and that's where Chromebooks really sing. One of the big benefits of them is they're designed for the enterprise. There's this enrollment functionality within them where I can enroll the device. Once I do that into my school's domain, I have full control over it. So to the point where we can lock out specific apps, we can lock out websites, we can lock down incognito browsing, or only let them sign in with their McKinnon, in my case, their school username. So I think there's tremendous flexibility around it. It's just about how you want to run your school. I mean, we here, we don't actually exercise any of that because they're a parent-purchased device. So we believe the device is with the student, and they really need to take, I guess, ownership of that device and say, well, I'm in charge of my learning. I need to not muck around on this thing. And we're not going to lock that down. If they stuff around on it, well, they're wasting their own time, and it'll be dealt with like any other disciplinary matter. So we give everyone the freedom to innovate. We leave it totally unlocked. They can log in and use it however they'd like. But when they need to be on task, they need to be on task.
Yeah, right. So there's a couple of questions that have come up in the doc already about deployment and management, which is sort of just touched on then. Gerard's asked, for the ease of management, do all Chromebooks need to be the same type, or can you have different types? And I guess with that, he's saying, is any Chromebook more suitable for deployment than others?
Sure. So I think the reading between the lines there, Gerard might be asking about BYOD program. So having a bit of a panel there where you can select a device, and Chromebooks lend themselves particularly well to this scenario where you can buy a device off the shelf. Someone can buy it from Harvey Norman if they want to. They can enroll it into your domain, and then the school has management over that for the life of that device. So that is one approach. Certainly the software that it runs is called Chrome OS. I noticed there was a question that came in previous to us starting the webinar just about well, what does it run? What's its capability? Well, it's just a web browser. So if you can do something in Google Chrome, you can do it on a Chromebook. There's a few discrepancies with that where the Chromebook has sort of a file viewer. You can save things into Google Drive straight on your file system, and it has like an update system built into it and a few things like that to boot it up. But there's no image. There's nothing like that. It always stays up to date. It's always checking for updates, and it staggers those updates. So like we had an issue here where an update Google pushed us knocked people off the wireless. So we held up all our Chromebooks with that management console. We said don't update anymore, and that was fantastic. So everyone who had the problem, there was about 30 kids. We fixed them by hand, but we didn't have 700 laptops turning up and saying it needs to be fixed now. So from a management point of view, they're an absolute dream. And yeah, I guess to talk back to the original point. Any hardware, it doesn't matter. It all runs Chrome OS. It's this one operating system. It's always tries to keep itself up to date. So you really don't have to worry about types of Chromebooks being less or more suitable. Any Chromebook is suitable. You've got to look at what's right for your school. I mean, we trialed different models. We put a Samsung Chromebook in the hands of a few kids at years 7, 8, and 9, and we trialed them for about a month and a half, about a term. And we got them every week to write into a Google form, which for those of you who don't know is just like a quick survey tool. Every week, at the end of each week, how did I go with this Chromebook? What were the things I couldn't do on it? What were the things that worked well on it? And then how did I find it in general, and did I have any other things I wanted to add? And that information helped us really sort of nail in on what are the things that we're going to run into, what are the problems we need to assess now and fix. There weren't many. The biggest problem we had was we gave kids different devices, and we looked at the wear and tear after a term, and some of the cheaper devices were just unsustainable. They were almost broken, and these were good kids we gave them to. Whereas if we've got a Lenovo Chromebook now, which is one of the sort of most rugged devices on the market, and we have very few problems with those. So that was a choice we made. They're more expensive, and we weren't looking for a cheap laptop. We were looking for a laptop that could do the best for us as a school. So we wanted to buy a laptop that did most of what most people need most of the time, if that makes sense. And that was for us to have a laptop that is fast, and Chromebooks are certainly fast. They boot up within 5 seconds, and they wake from sleep within 2 seconds. So that was a big priority for us, and we wanted to make sure we had a device that we could rely on being in kids' hands. So with a Windows device, we have Year 11s and 12s currently with Windows laptops. They come into the office and they need help. Something's broken, we have to re-image their computer, which means pulling all the data off it, storing that somewhere. It's 3 days' work, basically. There's 320 gig hard drives in there, all their movies and everything have to come off it. And we've got to copy all those back on. So So kids are often without laptops. And if you're talking about confidence in technology, teachers walking into a classroom where 3 or 4 kids don't have it, the lesson plan goes out the window, it's any wonder they don't want to use the technology. So for us, we were saying, let's look at Chromebooks because everything's in the cloud. If there's any problems, they come to the office. If the battery's flat, if it doesn't log in, no matter what the problem is, we just hand them a spare one. They go back to class, and we sort out the problem in our own time. So that's been the real paradigm shift for us. And there's no other device on the market that could do that for us. It could be that flexible, and kids don't lose data, always on task. Every kid in the class can be guaranteed he's got a device that works. That's been the real big game changer for us.
Yeah, right. So it's just that disruption to learning, isn't it? That you're trying to minimize that. You're trying to just solve problems quickly and efficiently. And I guess, so back to like that question from Gerard, you can have multiple different devices. So, I mean, like a HP Chromebook would play with a Lenovo Chromebook on the same network. They don't all have to be standardized, do they? You can have a range of different fleets out there, and it's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything works. I mean, they're all pretty standard anyway. Like, they all have similar processors in them, similar chipsets in them. They all have Wi-Fi. They all have webcams. Google have a minimum specification, so every Chromebook, I think, has to have a webcam, has to have certain USB ports. They update that all the time. So the newer devices that are coming out now, I think they're all USB 3 and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so they're pretty good with that, and it's a great way. You sort of don't have to think about the hardware to the point where we can batch send warranty jobs away. So we take care of the warranty jobs for the kids. They bring it in, we give them a laptop on loan straight away within 2 minutes, and we organise the warranty of those devices when we're ready. We don't have to drop everything and think, okay, this kid's without a laptop, we need to prioritise it. It just makes things far more manageable. And when you're talking about 2,000 students here at McKinnon, all with laptops in their hands, there'll be 2,600 computers here next year. There's no way for us to manage that in a traditional sense of Windows laptops.
Yep, so scale's huge as well. I just figured out how to put a doc into that showcase link, so hopefully that's showing up for you guys. And if you've got questions, throw it in there. We're more than happy to answer them as we go on the show today. So there's another couple of good questions come in. So there's someone saying they're a new user. We use Chromebooks to share in class. Is there a limit to how many users can be on a Chromebook?
To share, so when you're logged into a Chromebook, that's like signing into the Chrome browser. So if anyone's ever signed into the Chrome browser, all your apps come down and all that sort of stuff automatically syncs. So the same thing happens when you log into a Chromebook. There is no limit per se. I think there would be a limit eventually, just in the size of each of those profiles, because Chromebooks don't have a large hard drive in them. I've never hit the limit. We use them here with our Year 9s in trolleys. Our Year 9s don't have one-to-one devices. They're still using labs and trolleys. And those students use 120, have access to 120 trolleys of Chromebooks, and they use them interchangeably. They pick a new one up each week. There's a whole heap of, whenever you log in, you see a whole heap of user accounts that were previously logged in, and we've never hit a limit. So they work extremely well in a lab environment. If you're looking at getting a trolley and trialing them, Chromebooks are fantastic. We use them here for our, like I said, our Year 9 immersion program. We have an open plan learning space with 150 students online at once. Obviously, we have a Wi-Fi system that can handle that to some degree, but we have all those students in the open plan learning system. We use it for professional development. We host PD for companies. They come out and we have these Chromebook trolleys. We wheel them out. We have a login for all the staff, and away they go. It's really straightforward for us. So we have very few problems with them as well. Like, we just don't hear about them. All we hear about is how the Windows machines are crashing and dying, and the Chromebooks just manage themselves. So it's been really successful for us.
Yeah, I think you can fit up to 12 profile pictures on the front home screen. I think that's the number, but anyhow.
Yeah, but you can always go back in and just log in again and press that user, you type in your password, and it just logs you back in.
Yeah, and you can set them up in, is it called Kiosk mode, where you set them up and then it automatically wipes the device when they log off? Is that?
Yeah, you can do that. Kiosk mode is a different thing, but there are settings in the admin panel to wipe it back to fresh as soon as they log off. It clears all the cache. We don't do that just because we haven't had to yet. But kiosk mode is a little bit different. If you have kiosks in the school, you can buy these things called Chrome boxes, or you could use a Chromebook, and often they're good in a library if you have a like a circ terminal or a library catalog system in the library. You can lock them down to this kiosk mode where it only can go to one site or 2 sites that you specify, and yeah, really just have a directed experience. So that's a nice little thing if you want to buy a cheap laptop to do things like that with.
Yeah, we were talking to a school in Auckland last week that were looking at Chromebooks to use for tests, and what they wanted to do was put a certain number of Chromebooks into kiosk mode, and then so the students can't go off and do research while they're answering an exam, and then so they'd be able to do that. So I think there's another bit of an idea of how you might want to use a Chromebook in a kiosk mode to limit the functionality of that Chromebook, the websites that can access and so on. So that kind of leads into another question that's here in the doc. And by the way, guys, if you want to add your question to the doc, it's just bit.ly and then / capital C, capital B, and then Hangout, all one word. So CB for Chromebook and then Hangout, and you can access that. It says here we've begun to use and purchase Chromeboxes also. Has your school used any of these devices, and what are your thoughts on this?
We haven't. We've looked at Chromeboxes. They're really an interesting device, but just with the way everything's going, like just sort of speaking to this tablet thing that Mike was talking about, we really see mobile as the future, and I think laptops are where it's at for one-to-one devices, and we've used them in we've looked at using them in like a kiosk mode for libraries, or we're using them to do digital signage and things like that. But to be honest, we haven't got too far down the track with it, and yeah, there's not a real compelling need for us at the moment. Maybe in computer labs, but at this point we're pretty happy with what we're doing. We have the computer labs, which are the specialty labs where you go in to use Windows to do programming or Photoshop and things like that. We also have Mac labs to do video editing and to do music stuff. There's some music curriculum written in GarageBand and stuff that they need, and that works fine. They have access to that stuff. And then when they just want to do the generic tasks, like I'm saying, most of the tasks most of the time, they can just jump onto their Chromebook and create documents, collaborate, research, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and just as a testament to how much usage these things get in Blake's school, I've just been watching Blake. He's been a little bit blurry and uploads are being a bit slow, and just gets to 420 and all of a sudden, bam, he comes back and he's crystal clear. And so everyone must have left the property.
They get used, all right. Yeah, we get kids after school. They all jump on, start doing their homework out in the common area outside, and it gets absolutely hammered. So we have to. There's some considerations around that usage. We have to make sure that we have a really robust internet connection. We're provided with a department internet connection in Victoria that is okay. It's not served us particularly well with this volume of devices. So we've invested in a 200 meg link through Broadband Solutions. There's also a company, AARnet, who have just come into the market, who are offering really cheap internet connections for schools. So if you're in a metro area, definitely check out Broadband Solutions and AARnet. Those two are offering really good deals. I mean, we have a 200 megabit connection, which is uncontested upload and download, and that serves 2,000 students and 160 teaching staff. So yeah, that gets hammered, but that will serve us for a while, but we just don't see it go down. All it does is just go up and up and up. So if you are planning, make sure you're planning for the future. Yeah,
that's so true. Here's a question. How often do you suggest you turn over a Chromebook? What's the life you guys have put on your Chromebooks?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I was just thinking about that today, actually. We had a school out looking at what we were doing with Chromebooks, and they were asking the same question, and I thought, what we do is 7 to 9 and 10 to 12. So they take it at year 7, 8 and 9, and then at year 10, they take it. They keep that device at home. They get a new device 10 through to 12, and then they own the device, so they take it with them at the end. But it's an interesting question because I think they probably do last longer than 3 years, especially the ones we have now that are built really, really tough. But we can't really. What would we do? We'd keep them for 4 years and then get another one for 2 years. Like, it just doesn't make sense for us. So we've chosen with a 3-year turnover just because that takes them through 7 through to 9, 10 through to 12, takes them through their school life really cleanly.
Yeah, okay. Someone just put into the doc that people are asking questions on the Google Plus page as well. So Adet said, are you primary school in terms of not locked down? So I assume she's just asking about the difference between primary schools and high schools and policies and procedures around that.
Yeah, sure. So obviously we're a secondary school, and you know we afford a lot more freedom, I guess, than primary school. There's sort of a duty of care thing there. But look, to be honest, we keep everything as open as possible. That's not appropriate for every school. We're quite lucky here that students generally come to learn, and we're quite highly achieving academic schools. So we don't really have those too many of those cases where the technology gets abused. But certainly in some schools it is necessary to get things done, to lock things down, and that's why Chromebooks are great. So in a primary school, you know, you can lock down your Google Apps domain so that kids can only send emails internally and not externally. You can do that in secondary school as well. You can do that in any Google Apps domain. You can lock down your Chromebooks to only access a whitelisted number of sites. You know, there's really, the sky's the limit with the Chromebooks. You can push them specific apps that they're the only ones they can use. There's also a great little tool when you launch Chromebooks into your school. You get your own app store. So if anyone's familiar with the Chrome Web Store, you can just Google it now, Chrome Web Store. You can look through tons of apps. There's heaps of them in there. And if you've got your own domain signed up to Google Apps, you get a in our case, McKinnon Secondary College area, and we can just push people into that area. So we get our own curated store, which works really well. So we can just say, well, here's the curated apps we recommend. You can decide which ones to install. We don't force install apps on the computer for them, and then they can look through that curated list and pick the ones that they need for their classes, or the teachers can just send out the links, because realistically, most apps are just a link anyway.
Yeah, we're working on that, you and I, this morning too, trying to help that school in the US get sorted, pushing out apps and extensions. So yeah, that's a really nice feature as well, just being able to push things out to students and just know that they'll appear.
And it goes within 30 seconds. I mean, for anyone coming from a Windows environment, you can appreciate how long it takes to re-image a school. We can push an app out to the school in 30 seconds. You know, there's no packaging, there's no nothing. We don't have to use AppV or any services. It's all hands off. And really, that's the power of this, is that we're able to reduce our infrastructure at the school level. So we don't want to be paying for the time of my technicians. You know, we're a team of 5 people here to update servers and to, you know, fix SANs and to replace hard drives. We want to be paying them their wage to impact teaching and learning as much as possible. So to be assisting in class with, you know, we've got a 3D printer, we've got Oculus Rift that we're playing with, to be, you know, trying to get that stuff, the new stuff, into the curriculum and assist teachers as much as possible with that, rather than wasting our time burrowing away with switch networks and you know, storage area networks and all that sort of stuff. Mike knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'll just just reading Adam's comment too. He's just replied to Adet saying he's a primary school with 80 Chromebooks and they're brilliant for locking things down. So easy to manage. So yeah, so he just obviously got some experience inside a primary school scenario as well, which is great. Someone on the Google Plus page has also said that they use OneNote a lot, and as a LOTE teacher, the inbuilt recording function is really good. However, on the iPad, the version there is got no recording function, so I assume that's the OneNote for iPad. Like, I love OneNote on a Surface tablet with that recording and the writing function. I think that's brilliant.
Really good.
I mean, that is so good. If we could bring that kind of thing across into a Chromebook, that'd be gold. So I mean, I love the Surface tablet for some of the stuff you can do, especially for high school, with the OneNote and the recording. And there are, I guess this is where I was coming back to before. There's always going to be limitations somewhere, regardless of what you use, whether it's a PC, a Chromebook, an iPad. And I guess it really does come back to a school to say, well, how do our teachers teach? How do we need to use technology and embed that into the curriculum? It was an interesting discussion on Google Plus as well. Are we moving to a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 in our schools? So they might come with a tablet and a computer. Do you see that as a trend, or do you think that maybe, you know, cost would be an issue? Or I mean, have you thought much about that?
I know some schools that are doing that, actually, who have an iPad program, who have said, you know what, we need PCs as well. And it's not been, I won't name names, but it's not been very successful.
Okay.
I think the problem, the fear that I would have as someone who splits my time evenly between, system administration, giving people access, and evangelizing and providing professional development is, how do you structure your PD? How is there enough time in the day to explain how to use things on a PC and an iPad? And not everyone needs that explanation, but I think for that big middle that you're trying to grab, there's the early adopters that will always do it. There's the laggards that you'll never get on board. But that big middle's up for grabs. And I think if you can't create a clear vision and a clear strategy for your school, that's very difficult. But having said that, we do probably have a bit of a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1, but it's more bottom up. Whereas kids will bring a phone in and they'll connect that to Google Apps and have their documents on there, and they'll collaborate in the recess, and they'll answer emails to teachers on the train on the way home, and we provide Wi-Fi access for all students. We have this culture which is freedom to innovate, so we want to give everyone the ability to use technology however they like. We don't enforce anything. We don't believe in sort of giving everyone a structure they have to work within. We say, here's the internet, here's the Wi-Fi, here's the tools. They're all open and free to use, and go for it. And that has really created a lot of ownership in it. So we find our teachers and our students alike, they both, they're just jumping into it. So they're saying, let's try this. I built this. This was my idea. I got creative with it. And they own that, and they share that, and other teachers can benefit from it. And even the other day, I was just having a look through our Google Sites, and I found a site where kids had, been on a camp, Duke of Edinburgh camp, and they'd come back and they said, oh, here's a site for all our class. Can we just all put our photos in here so we can share them with each other? And I thought that's just interesting. That's not very, it's not so much a curriculum thing, but it's just more of a sharing thing, and I'm sure that gets used in ways for study groups and other things. I'm sure if I sifted through all the Google Sites, I'd find little study sites and other things as well. Like giving kids the freedom to use these tools. I mean, that's what it's all about. We want to provide them a platform that's really straightforward and clear about what it is, and then just let them go.
Yeah, okay. Gee, there's so many questions coming in. I'm just looking at the clock. Let me take a couple of questions out of the Google form that some people filled out as part of the sign-up process. There's a question here I think lots of people ask, and it's, can classic printers be used on, that are used on the network, can they be used on a Chromebook? Can you print from those?
Right, classic printers, that's that's an interesting one. We have multifunction printers and sort of standard printers here at McKinnon. Up until the start of the year, that would have been a no, unless the printer supported what's called Google Cloud Print. And Google Cloud Print is really quite cool. It doesn't have all the advanced functionality, but for the printers that have it, you can send a print job from your phone at home to work, and it'll appear on the printer. So from that point of view, Cloud Print's really interesting. But PaperCut, which are pretty much the leading provider of cost recovery software for schools. Almost every school either has PaperCut or knows what it is. They have a Cloud Print driver, so you can install that into PaperCut, and it will act as the Cloud Print negotiator, basically. So all your printers that are currently on your print server can now be Cloud Print enabled. And that works really well. So we use that here at McKinnon. All the cost recovery still works. We can still figure out which department's printing too much, and students have to pay for their printing. They can't just print off willy-nilly. So that works really well, actually. Cloud Print with PaperCut, definitely check that out if you need any help with that. I'll put in some resources into the document for you.
Yeah, that's good advice. It's getting easier and easier to print. I love that whole Cloud Print. You can print from anywhere.
Oh, any device, my phone or Chromebook or laptop with Chrome, it's great.
Yeah, that's good. How's antivirus software handled on a Chromebook?
Antivirus. That's a good question, Mike. How many viruses have you had on your Chromebook?
Zero right now. But how does that happen?
How does that happen? Well, the great thing about Chrome is they take sort of responsibility for that. So it's a really closed platform. So to the point where you can't even really mess with the boot ROM. If you mess with anything, it says, there's something wrong with my system. I need to go back and be factory reset. So from that point of view, if anyone tries to fiddle with anything, it doesn't work. Now, having said that, there are extensions you can install that sort of act as a bit of malware or spyware and do things, but you have to authorize those to go in. So it'll say, we want to have access to look at your emails. And if you say accept, then they have access to look at your emails. So, yeah, from that point of view, there's a little bit of education you'll need to do as with any device, but nothing can attack the system in the same way that you get, Trojans and things inside Macs and PCs. There's nothing out there at the moment. I mean, that's not to say it can't happen, but it certainly hasn't happened in the history of Chromebooks.
Yeah, and so when files are uploaded to a Chromebook, they run through Google's virus software, and as they're coming back down to the Chromebook as well. So it seems to it gets passed in on the uplink and then on the downlink, from what I've heard as well. So
yeah, it does. So it stops infecting the rest of your network, which is good. But having said that, I mean, viruses are just apps that run on the computer, and if you allow them to run, then they'll run. But the great thing with Chromebooks is they protect their system partitions, so nothing can get into the system and start controlling your screen or picking up your keystrokes and doing those things.
Yeah. Another question, what comes installed on a Chromebook? So if you get a PC, obviously it comes with some Windows programs and some applications. What comes if you unbox a Chromebook? What's on there?
It comes with Chrome, the web browser. So you've got the web browser, and you've got a couple of system things. So you have a way to sort of set up like a control panel where you can set up your language and your Wi-Fi settings and a few things like that. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty lightweight. So yeah, it's pretty much just the Chrome browser, and anything you can run in a Chrome browser will run on a Chromebook. So it's a great way to test things out. Yeah,
here's a great question, and I know you guys are looking at this as an option for next year. Someone, let me just see who it is, Martin from New Zealand, is just asking about having the Chromebooks connect to a wireless network at the school without manual intervention. So basically, how do you get it so like a supplier can ship those Chromebooks to your school, and when the kids just open them for the first time, everything's there, they're connected and they're running. So, I mean, what are you guys planning and hoping for around that?
Sure. So I can tell you where we've come from, which is when we first rolled these out, we sort of, we were the first school to do it en masse, and we weren't really sure how it was going to go, and we had them all delivered to the school, and we went through a process with each student where they logged in and logged into the wireless themselves, and then made sure that they could use the device. Then they left and took their box with them, and that was a nightmare. We don't want to repeat that. That was a time in my life that I don't want to remember, just for a number of reasons. I mean, one, just because they were Year 7s, and it was so overwhelming for them coming to this new school, and then we were throwing them this box and telling them to log in and what's your password and hurry up because you've only got 45 minutes to do all this, and it was really taxing on everyone. And what we're aiming for next year is to have a zero-touch approach. So there's this service that most suppliers will do called white gloving. The white gloving service is them opening it up at their warehouse, logging into the internet, and enrolling the device onto your domain. So that you give them a username, and they'll enroll that device onto, in our case, the McKinnon domain, and it picks up all our settings. So all the settings that we have in our domain for Wi-Fi can get pushed to that device while they're in the warehouse. And then we're going to say, well, instead of shipping to the school and we distribute them, we just want them all shipped to the students' houses. So they get them over the holidays, they can have a play with them, and when they turn up to school, that setting's already there. It's been pushed into the device, it connects to the network, and they just get on task. Yeah, day one.
Yeah, so it's certainly possible to do, and I know there's a lot of schools that are looking at, down that pathway of that zero-touch management and having them pre-enrolled, which is great.
Big advantage.
Yeah. Now, Blake, you put a couple of links into the doc. Do any of those links deal with like a bit of a plan to roll out Chromebooks in the school, thinking through scenarios and so on?
Yeah, sure does. So the Successfully Deploying Chromebooks link that's up the top, posted on Medium, that's sort of a resource I've put together just because I get an overwhelming amount of questions about this stuff, and that should answer most of the big questions that people have around, what's the best funding model and why we chose our supplier, and what all this device enrollment's all about, and how we sort of got our adoption rate so good. I mean, our usage of Google Apps, we've had Google Apps for about 5 years. Our usage tripled in the last 6 months, which is an astounding figure considering we're already heavily using Google Apps. And part of that was around our communication plan. We had a very strict plan in place of how to communicate with staff, communicate with students, communicate with parents, and get our adoption rate up to 100%, so that every student has a Chromebook. And yeah, all the stuff is laid out in there about how I did it, the timeline that I used, how we distributed the devices, what we're going to do differently next time. And yeah, just sort of a few things for the future and some things to think about with having hot spares in the office, and just a few logistical things that you'll want to wrap your head around. So definitely check out those articles. Well worth a read. And if you've got any questions, I think my details are in there. So definitely hit me up.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what about this concept of see if there's any benefit of touch on a Chromebook? Do you see that playing together? Are you guys looking at that?
Well, yeah, we're looking at it for sure. The new Lenovo and Acer, I think, both have the touch functionality, and I've got to say it's pretty smooth. I don't know if anyone's used Windows tablets before the Surface Pro, but the previous Windows tablets were very clunky. Using it on the Chromebook, it's like an iPad. It's really buttery smooth. So I think there is an opportunity there for app developers, especially book providers. Publishing houses. They're really lagging behind the times with what they can do. A lot of them have gone into this games-based stuff, and it might be on the iPad, or it's just on the Mac, or it's just on the PC, and getting that stuff into the web and having a device like a Chromebook that can manipulate that with your finger, I think that'll open the door on a lot of things, especially a lot of those experiences that are on the iPad that are so good. Being able to bring those to a product that can, like the Lenovo tablet can flip on itself and just walk around the room like it's a normal tablet. And then when you need to get some work done, you can use the keyboard and mouse. So I think there's some real opportunities there. Nothing is out at the moment really that's interesting. But having said that, Chromebooks weren't really even available in Australia, a year and a half ago. So it's been a pretty meteoric rise already. I'm interested to see how quickly that evolves.
Yeah, I mean, I got pretty excited when I saw the new Yoga come out, and you had that touchscreen functionality. You could run it in Chrome mode, and even for schools that wanted to run that dual PC and Chrome mode, I mean, you can run it in PC mode, or you can boot them up in Chrome mode as well. And then that flowing back down into a Chromebook model as well. I definitely see there's some great advantages, and I think they're just a really nice device. Personally, I'm waiting for one. So if Lenovo would hurry up and ship one, that would be really nice. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Someone's just said in here that Virtunet can actually pre-enroll the devices for schools, so that might be something that you want to have a talk to Chantel about. There's someone here asking, do Google certifications offer in-depth training or knowledge? We certainly do a lot of training around Chromebooks and deployment and best usage, best way to use Chrome apps and extensions and Google apps as well. And we've also got that conference. If you go right to the top of that document, the Chromebook Management and Use Best Practice document, there's a link to a conference that we're running called the Using Technology Better Conference. And so the short URL to that is bit.ly and then /UTB conference. And there's going to be a strand that Blake is actually going to run on Chromebook use, deployment, management, and so on. And so we've been talking now for 45 minutes and just scratching the surface just a little bit. Blake's going to spend a whole day and just go from start to finish, best practice, how to use them, whether that's in a high school or a primary school scenario. So I'd encourage you to check out the conference, and if it's something that would interest you, if you'd like to spend a day with Blake just working through that, that would certainly be the best place to access his knowledge. And the fact that you could spend a whole day with him for under $200 is a real bargain, I think. So right now I'm just going to put hopefully up in the Google Plus Hangout. There's a link across to the conference, and you can check that out. Or just go to usingtechnologybetterconference.com.
And on that as well, Mike, it's not just about our implementation. I'm really passionate about it driving the teaching and learning, or it being a tool for teaching and learning. And I'm going to provide heaps of examples. We're going to work through stuff in those sessions. And one of the things with our conferences is it's not about just sitting here and talking like this. It's about actually getting in and doing, using the Chrome browser, talking about pushing apps. And then we can talk about the apps that you do push and how we could use those, going through some of those Chrome apps. And we'll actually make some real resources you can take back to the classroom and use straight away. So I'm really looking forward to that stuff. It's going to be really fun.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. Not just because we're running it, but just because I think it's going to be just a really good time and opportunity to help teachers. There's a question here, what's some useful apps and extensions that you could recommend for primary schools? I've got a list of apps and extensions that are broken down into different categories, and at the end of this, I can't find it just off the top of my head while I'm talking to you, but I'll drop it into this document and you can certainly have a look at that. So if you come back and have a look at that doc, within 5 minutes of us hanging up, I'll have an answer there for you about some apps and extensions that I certainly like and tend to run. A couple of more questions, mate, and then we might start to wrap up.
Yeah, sure.
When it comes to using Chromebooks, does Flash work on a Chromebook? There's a question here from Amanda in Australia asking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Flash, the short answer is Flash works, yeah. There is a older version of Shockwave Player that doesn't work, that we've had a few really old resources that we use not work with, but we're talking about one or two things that I've come across in the time I've used it. But normal Flash stuff, yeah, works a treat, and that's one of the big advantages I think that people were complaining about on the iPad where Flash didn't work, and a lot of the resources went away from it, but there's still a lot that use it. So yeah, Flash definitely works fine.
Yeah, okay. And obviously most websites would run fine on that. Embedded videos, generally speaking, work well.
Yeah, you can have, well, with some of the early Chromebooks are a bit slow, but with ours you can have, any Chromebook you buy presently in the market, you can have 100 tabs open and still use the device fine. You can stream video, and Spotify and all those services work. Yeah, there's plenty of scope to really use them to their full potential. That's for sure.
Okay, great. Just having a look. Yeah, man, so many questions.
Yeah, there is. There's a heap in here, isn't there?
I'm just trying to pull out some that would be relevant to most people. There's a few technical questions. I might let you just get back to people on that because it seems fairly specific to their network settings, and maybe you can help. Battery life on a Chromebook, there's a good one.
Yeah, well, that'll depend on the model you buy, but typically, you're going to get 6 or 7 hours at a minimum. We've had very few problems with the battery. The only issue we've had is kids sometimes don't charge them at home, but you're going to have that with any device you buy, really. So the battery stuff's fine. We easily get through a school day. There's no real issues. We actually will swap a battery out for the kids who forget, rather than taking their device in and giving them another one. We just say, here's a battery, swap that out, and on your way. And that works really well. I did notice there was something in here about... what was that question? Oh, I've lost it now. Sorry.
That's all right. There's heaps in here. Someone's put in some information about Samsung Chromebooks. If you've purchased a Chromebook in the past, so you guys can just read that text in the doc for yourselves. No point us going into that, repeating it. Someone's asked about a 64-bit Chromebook. Where did that question go? With Chrome coming out with a 64-bit version, would you expect or guess we would see a 64-bit Chromebook in the future? I don't know. Do you have any insight or intel or speculation?
Yeah, of course we will. I think Google will mandate it. It'll just be a matter of time. If they say, if you want to build a Chromebook, it's got to be 64-bit.
Yeah, okay. Yep, I reckon that's going to be interesting. All right, man. We've been going for about 50 minutes, and time just flies every time we chat. I really enjoy our times hanging out together. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up today's show in terms of thoughts or things that you want to add before we go?
Yeah, there's a few things that I sort of impart for people. I think it's more about just managing the change than it is, and that's really what I'm big on, is just doing planning on the change and looking at what are people's fears going to be. Can you allay those fears? Like especially with Chromebooks, everyone's going to say, well, it doesn't do Photoshop, it doesn't do video editing. Now, having said that, I had a staff member in the office yesterday. We were actually going through a video editing application that he has to do with his kids, and it was handling that fine. We were using a thing called WeVideo. He was putting live photo shares up there and video clips together and doing voiceovers, all really easy and straightforward. I was surprised at how well it worked, actually. So these tools are out there. You just got to think outside the box a little bit. It's not going to be Photoshop, but it might be another tool like Pixlr or any of the other 100 photo editing tools that are out there. But there are going to be times where you've built curriculum for GarageBand, or you've done something like that. And what I say to that is that you don't want to give everyone it's overpowered super beast of a computer that costs $1,600 when the majority of your students are just going to use the web and create documents and do basic word processing. We wanted to give a device to people that did most of what they needed most of the time. And that wasn't ridiculously expensive. There's no need for them to have a power horse of a PC or a Mac to do word processing through the year. There are a need in certain areas. We have music faculties and things like that, and art faculties. And for those small areas of 20 or 50 kids or whatever it is, we've got labs for that. And that's sort of what they're for. We don't want to just provide one platform. We want to say we've got access to Windows, you're going to get access to Macs, you're going to have exposure to Chromebooks. It's just about that all-encompassing learning environment. So definitely do some thinking around that. Definitely do some thinking around your training and PD. Don't just put them in and expect them to work. A lot of schools have problems with that. Reach out to people that you know. Get external trainers in. I think that was one of the best things we ever did was have Mike come in and speak to our staff, because it just started that conversation flowing. He was able to talk to them about things they hadn't even thought of and we hadn't thought of. We did a lot of internal PD. We'd been using Google Apps for a long time, and Mike came in and showed some stuff that really reinvigorated everyone and got them really excited to get the Chromebooks happening, and couldn't wait to get the program moving. And definitely communicate a clear vision from the top. You've got to have your administration on board. If your admin aren't behind it and aren't sort of allotting resources and training time to it, it's sort of going to be doomed to fail, isn't it? So that's certainly what I've seen in schools. Just creating those competencies, saying, well, let's have a clear vision from the top. These are the things you need to be able to do. We're going to be using Google Apps. We're going to be using Chromebooks in these ways. Let's provide training. Let's give staff the support that they need. And then the last thing that I always say is you want to measure it. Do some surveys, use Google Forms, talk to your staff, talk to your students, find out what's actually going on and what you can do to fix it. I think if you do all those things, you can't go wrong.
Yeah, great advice, mate. And I think that's it. Planning really is key, and that's one of the things that brought you and I together. And working out is that the way that you planned things out and thought things through really caught Google's attention. Then, like, Mike, you need to go talk to this guy Blake and really learn from him and see what he's doing with Chromebooks. And so I just happened to be in Melbourne. We caught up, and it's all history from there. So Blake's not just talking this theory stuff. They actually do. They do preach and practice what they preach, so to speak. We would encourage you guys as we wrap up today to reach out to Chantel at Virtunet and ask her for an evaluation unit or to get some pricing and some quotes off her. One of the reasons I've worked a little bit with Chantel and Virtunet over the last little while is because they honestly do more Chromebook sales than anybody else in Australia. So that ought to tell you something about their capacity and their passion. And they're just great to work with, great perspective, good resources behind them, great connections, and a lot of experience. So we want to thank Chantel and Virtunet for bringing this show together. I mean, they don't pay us to do it, but it's just good to be able to partner with people who are doing great things. And so we certainly appreciate that. Blake, we're going to catch up again in another couple of weeks and got another show coming out, and looking forward to hanging out again with you. But in the meantime, I'm going to shoot through, and I've got this new website we just launched today, the usingtechnologybetter.com website. It's nearly ready, but I'm not going to go to bed until it's completely done.
Nearly ready. I've heard that before, Mike.
Oh man, it's a never-ending story, but I'm not going to bed until it's done. That's my promise. Excellent. All right. Well, once again, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to watch us. We appreciate you hanging out. We appreciate you participating. We love it when you share your ideas, your resources, and you contribute to the show and make it what it is. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, mate. It's been great.